Sup YouTube? I've been wanting to do a video like this in this exact video for like the past 5 years, but I just haven't gotten either the chance, the opportunity, or just whatever to really do it and film it the way I want to, and I feel like today is a good day to do that for myself. The golden year of brutal death metal, what really inspired me to do this is just, well, I just think that this is the most perfect year of brutal death metal, and I can give you many not even just opinions, but actual facts as to why it's the greatest year for brutal death metal. So without further ado, I'm just going to be talking about pretty much like every release in brutal death metal. So this is for the true old school brutal death metal sick horror freaks. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. I just realized I'm also like the biggest brutal death metal YouTuber on YouTube now. Like pure and pure, like 90% of my content is brutal death metal. I'm like the only one who actually still does brutal death metal YouTube. There's like a few others, but let's get started. Flagship is obviously Pierced from Within. This is signed by Frank and Terrence. It can't get any more classic than Pierced from Within when you're talking about 1995 and brutal death metal. This is like the flagship, probably the top 3 brutal death metal releases of all time. Really not much to say. You have great tracks like Thrones of Blood, the remake of Synthetically Revived, Brood of Hatred with those gnarly bass drop slams. Can't get any more classic for Suffocation than this. 1995 also saw a shift in Pyrexia. They went from like the more Suffocation sound on Sermon to more of like a traditional, more groove, brutal death style. I thought it was okay. I much prefer the System of the Animal that came after, but my top 10 brutal death metal albums of all time are Sermon and Mockery. But 1995 saw like that little shift in Pyrexia. But another heavy hitter is Scatter Remnants with Inherent Perversion. With this one, they want a lot more darker, almost black metal at times in the brutal death metal sound. Again, old school brutal death metal. If you saw my top 10 brutal death metal EPs, this came in second place. First place on that is actually also on here as well. Mortician sound heavier than ever on this. That very really just reverb total sound. Probably one of the heaviest Mortician releases, along with Zombie Apocalypse and Chainsaw Dismemberment. I do like Hacked Up for Barbecue if we're talking full length albums. I like those punky grind sounds. In 1995, Broken Hope, also with Repulsive Conception, kind of slowed down, kind of changed the gore, more grindy sound of Bowels of Repugnance and Swamped in Gore for a more traditional, more groovy, brutal death metal sound. Songs for this, like For Only the Sick, Pitbull Grin, Dilation and Excretion were always some of my favorites on that. A lot of songs on that. You had stuff like Deranged coming through with Rated X. Of course, this is the more safe artwork to show on YouTube, because YouTube has been getting me lately. New York East Coast, we of course got the first release from Internal Bleeding on the first full length. We have it signed by Christ and Frank Rini. So pretty much as classic old school death metal sounding Internal Bleeding, besides the first demo, As You Can Be, the Invocation of Evil. Again, talking about early Wild Rag Records, we have Torture Crypt. This is signed by Brian, the drummer. Great New Jersey brutal death metal. But it's just solid releases. Like before this, like 91, you kind of had like the formations like the Swamped in Gore, Effigy of the Forgotten, like Human Waste coming out. 92, you had stuff like Mortal Decays, Dawn of Misery, and Disgorge just kind of starting out. 93, we have like more concrete sound of like the brutal death metal stuff like Banished, Breeding the Spawn. 94, we had stuff like Afterbirth kind of speeding up the guttural sound. Scatter Remnants kind of starting, DF kind of getting that more groovy Internal Bleeding sound. But again, on Wild Rags, we have, in my opinion, the best brutal death metal EP is Gradually Melted by Deeds of Flesh. This is a flagship. Nothing they did sounded like this afterwards, really. Kind of just got like super fast and blasty. But Gradually Melted just has those sick licks. And we're just getting started. I still have so much, but I mean, like, The Broken Hope, Internal Bleeding, Scattered Remnants, Mortician, Suffocation, like crazy stuff. More obscure stuff, we have, what was this? This was Reincarnation, kind of like, what would be like Pyrexia's Sermon of Mockery, kind of like in that vein. You know, kind of like decrepit birth, kind of like later following. Detestation, another brutal one, doesn't really get talked about. This is kind of like an obscure pick. This is the Massacre of Hate. Yo, speaking about remember when bands would do this, like the very small, like short slip case, like. It's so annoying because once this cracks, like minded, like it's so hard to find these to replace. They're like slim cases compared to like a real. Look at that difference. Like it's slim. So that was kind of autism. New York, again talking about New York. We have some heavy hitters like Immortal Suffering with the Eternal Damnation. Always like the Sacred Descender track, stuff like Immortal Suffering on this. Very cool guitar work. You had stuff like Malamore with Condemn the Rising. So a lot of like New York brutal death metal, very much so, just like starting to really come. Canada, I'm going to be talking about Canada a lot too, but a cool one that I have is Obscene Crisis with Silence of the Mind. This is kind of like a brutal death, kind of like grindy at some points, but not really. I really enjoyed this. A very cool tape. Ohio, we have Ton with Point of View. This is my favorite Ton. I do like Blind Follower, but I just love how this looks. It was later released on Pathos, the infamous John Dwyer. Love him, hate him. He was a part of 90s brutal death metal. So yeah, Ton, Point of View. Signed by Dan Gates. This was actually one of his personal copies. I found this band. I put this band on the internet. This is Self-Inflicted with Massacre. We're trying to figure out when this came out. It did come out in 1995, according to Metal Archives. Someone said it was like 97 or 98, but I'm going to trust Metal Archives. It's pretty hard to get correct information on the Metal Archives with stuff, but Self-Inflicted Massacre was some really cool stuff. I have it on my channel, in my playlist. If you scroll on my channel, you'll find all the releases that I have put on YouTube. For Jersey, Mortal Decay's Brutalizing Creation. This is, in my opinion, the best brutal death metal demo of all time. This is the original cover. I have talked about why they didn't have the original scans, and I would not have showed that on YouTube because restrictions. I do have the original audio on this. It has like 16,000 views. It's one of the first videos that pop up when you go on my brutal death metal, old school death metal, grindcore death grind playlist on my YouTube channel if you scroll. But the reason why this is important to listen to instead of the other version that's on YouTube or Spotify, the songs are actually recorded differently. Like the song Delirium has way different guitars than what's on Spotify, so it's a completely different listen experience. You're getting that true, more old school brutal death metal sound with this Brutalizing Creation version. Flesh Grind with Sorrow Breeds Hatred, Bleed Onto Me. This is probably my favorite Flesh Grind. I do like Holy Pedophile. Didn't like the full length Seeds of the later 2000 one. I like better than I forget what the 97 one is, but I think it's the Seeds that I like or don't like. The 2000 one I like. But yeah, this great guitar work, great vocals. If you like Broken Hope, this is right up your alley. It's kind of like Broken Hope 2.0 with a little bit more concrete, brutal death metal sound. Cyanosis with Rebirth, great grooves. If you're into like the New York death metal sound of like Dehumanized, Repudiation, this is right up your alley. This is Cyanosis Rebirth. I have the 93 demo up on my channel. Some more Suffocation worship, Beheaded with Soul Dead. If you like Effigy of the Forgotten, you will really much appreciate Beheaded with Soul Dead. Those are all my physical copies. I did sell my Disgorge 95. I did sell my Swollen Heaps Skinless and my Tyrant Trooper Insane Sickness CD. And just, I'd rather have the money than have it in my collection, pretty much. Those weren't like total, complete, everyday listens to me like these were. But I am also going to go through, I have Metal Archives up. We're just going to go through pretty much all the other bands because I have listened to all 200 bands that are on this. So get ready because I'm going to be teaching you a thing about brutal death metal from 1995. Agonio with Promo 95. If you're into like super raw, brutal death metal, this is right up your alley. I love this one. In 1995, bands like Cenotaph with Life Immortal were kind of getting more of their signature sound. This is, of course, the Turkish Cenotaph that you know for like Voluptuously Minced or whatever it's called, stuff like that. One of my favorite brutal death metal bands of all time. You had Corpse God with Rehearsal 95. That's really good stuff. Dead End, again, they're like Illinois bands with The Dead Shall Rot. This would be later recorded for their later material, their later demos. But Dead End is one of my all-time favorite brutal death metal bands of all time. Most of my tape collection actually came from Vaughn of Dead End and later Lividity. Defeated Sandy would release their first demo with Defeated, another pivotal top 10 brutal death metal bands of all time, if we're being honest. Poeticide with Necrology is another really good one. Speaking about Jersey, Jersey's very own Gaft, which wished to be Ritual Torment with It Hurts to Be Dead. Gaff have also come back from the dead to release 2 new albums that I really enjoy. One of my top picks for the year. Hidden Pride, another Canada band with the Encounter of the First Kind. This is the earlier material before Brutal Advice. Hidden Pride, great band. Another great band, like I mentioned, Lividity with Ritual of Mortal Impalement. Ritual of Mortal Impalement, kind of like the early Lividity sound, not really that more sickened grind sample sound that the band is known for. You also have Mangled with Mutilated Sexual Orifice, which was Repudiation before they were Repudiation. It took a while to get the Mangled sound out. I, for one, do not care for Mangled's release. I think it's complete garbage compared to Repudiation, but it was released. You also have a band called Monster with Sexate and Sinzamela. That's like, who cares? But Necrocide with Vomit for Blood. This is before Devourment. I'm pretty sure this has Brad Fincher. I might be mistaken, but it did. Also has Neuropath with Nefarious Vivisection, which was a kind of cool one. Nocturnal Silence with Into the Abscess. If that sounds familiar, that is because that was the unique leader band Disavowed before they were disavowed, which was a cool little fact. You do have Pederasty again from the Illinois with their self-titled demo. You have Rotten Course with their self-titled demo as well. You also have Rotting with the Drown and Rotting Flesh. This kind of has that more Swedish grave sound to their sound. You did also have Sons of Chaos with Book of Lies. Sons of Chaos, kind of like a melodic, brutal death metal band. That's even like a thing. The later stuff had artwork from Chris of Internal Bleeding. You also had Uncreation with Death to Humanity, which was a really nice one. Depraved Sexual Killer. I do have this on tape. I don't know why I didn't think of that one, but Depraved Sexual Killer, I have this on tape. It has been put on YouTube. That's a really cool, like, obscure, like, really obscure one. Inhume with Demo 1995 was another good one. Negligent Collateral Collapse, kind of like gore grind with brutal death metal. I enjoy it. Might not be for everyone. Resurrected with Sinner of an Unable God, kind of like, okay, Rotten Minds, if you believe in my suffering, you believe in my death. That's another good one. I like their later stuff. One of like the earliest bands to be on. I can't think of that label. What's that label? I can't think. Hecatomb Records. Yeah, like, that's weird. Hecatomb Records. Mastic Scum, this is kind of like brutal death grind as well. We also have Fermento with Mummified Alive, that's a great one. Sodomized with Cannibalistic Devourment, which is also a great one. Malicious Hate with Bring Forth Hate. I have that one too. I don't know why I didn't show that one off as well. I'm slacking. Disembowel with Uncurable Wounds is another great one. Abnegation, kind of like metalcore with brutal death metal. It's not for everyone. I don't know if I said Gorelust with Rainis Lunacy. That's another great one. Nile with Festivals of Atonement is another really good one. For everyone knows Nile. That's a big band. Kadath with Into the Eternal Depths of Sorrow and Desolation. Again, that brutal death metal and grindcore. You know, grindcore and brutal death metal back in the day kind of like really went head and head. Like, those were the two genres that kind of really branched off into each other. You know, you look at like early Suffocation and Pyrexia, they're always talking about bands like Brutal Truth and Napalm Death, you know. Mental Horror with Beyond the Premonitions was another good one. Again, Skinless, Swollen Heaps, The Tyrant Trooper, Insane Sickness, and Crucified Corpse, Serval to the Serene. Again, Disgorge 95 too. I think Disgorge 95 is the best Disgorge material for me. But I mean, with all of these bands, you see all these bands really get their start. You have some really big heavy hitters like Scatter Remnants, Suffocation, Mortician, Broken Hope, Mortal Decay. I mean, there's no other year for brutal death metal, I think, that really just had so much going for to it. You had big bands debuting, you had big bands starting out, you had big bands putting out their like flagship release, you had all these other like sick obscure bands really just going in and just popping out material in 1995. Like 1995 was like really the true start where like brutal death metal kind of ascended to where it was just like a few releases here and there to where it just kind of shipped out there. And for those reasons, I really do feel like 1995 is the golden year for brutal death metal, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. This was the best year for brutal death metal. You know, stuff like this are always getting talked about. Voracious Contempt is getting copied still to this day with bands. Pierce from Within. Even people who don't even know the term brutal death metal, who are into like tech death and old, you know, normal death metal. You know, people that are into like deathcore, like The Art Is Murder and Cattle Decapitation and Black Dahlia Murder, say, you know, I listen to Pierce from Within. You know, that's what they say. They always talk about Pierce from Within. You know, Pierce from Within, Voracious Content. You had Scatter Remnants, arguably the most popular release with Inherent Perversion. You always see that artwork going around. I personally like the demo and Destined to Fail as well. Better, but it is the strong, like very strong material that really this brutal black and death metal sound. Deeds of Flesh starting out with their material. Mortal Decay dropping the most insane demo of all time for brutal death metal. Like, it sounds like it was stolen from like a serial killer, and that's like what was left when they found it in like the basement. You had Mortician's most arguable heavy release with House by the Cemetery, you know. Skinless with Swollen Heaps was a game changer in their sound, more of that like heavier sound. You had stuff like Beheaded, once again, coming out with that Suffocation sound, setting the standard. But, you know, tell me in your comments what your favorite year for brutal death metal is. Write some of your favorite 1995 brutal death metal releases. Tell me if you want more videos like this where I'm just talking about more years for brutal death metal. You know, I love talking about brutal death metal. If you want like a tier list ranking for every year from like 91 to, you know, like 2003 or whatever, you know, tell me, because it takes a while for me to make these videos, especially with my work and my busy life. So if you want those videos, let me know. You know, if enough people really want them videos, I will make videos like tier lists, like 91 through 2003. Like I said, you know, I'll rank each demo of brutal death metal each album that year. And especially for 1995, I just thought that there was never like full-length releases to this degree. You know, you had like Breeding the Spawn, Bowels of Repugnance, and like Banished for 93, and like that's kind of it. This was like do. But anyways, please do subscribe. I much so appreciate it. It means the world. Like I said, pretty much my 10,000 subs kind of made me the biggest brutal death metal YouTuber. I really do appreciate it. I love that I get so much messages a day, like, you showed me this band in 2020, you know, I follow your stuff on Facebook before YouTube. You know, it means the world to me. That's why I keep doing it, because I love being an influencer. I love showing people the true old school brutal death metal bands that I love, because I'm passionate about it, and we have built such a great community. I love it. So thank you so much for that, and until next time, peace out.